It's a game between two of India's finest positional players, Vidit Gujrathi and Harika D. A fist bump to begin, and Vidit opens the game with 1 d4. Harika plays d5 and c4 on the board. We have the Slav defense. What does Vidit play? Oh, he plays the exchange variation. Exchange variation of Slav and bishop f4. Generally, it is considered to be very drawish in nature. Very symmetrical, very drawish. But Vidit is a master positional player. He brings his knight out a6, stopping knight b5 and now bishop e2. Notice how the knight is not developed on f3 too soon so that the bishop cannot come and pin it. So with this, Vidit is hoping that black will go e6 to block the bishop on c8. But Harika is taking her time here. She's not making her move so quickly. It's a 3-minute plus 2-second increment game. Already Harika has taken close to 30 seconds for this move. g6 is one idea. You can also play bishop f5 and then e6. But bishop f5 could be met with queen b3 ideas, attacking b7. That's always the point. So Harika plays knight e4. Now this is quite a weird move, because with this, she's moved the same piece twice in the opening, and with it, without too much of thought, just develops his knight and tells Harika, if you take on c3, I'm happy to take it back. And Harika should have done that, but she goes bishop f5, and now Vidit can take on e4. It's very much possible to do that. Knight e4, and if d4, he can bring his knight back to d2. You can see that although this is like a symmetrical opening, the game is heating up. Vidit castles e6 on the board. So Harika has got what she wanted. She's got a solid center. She's got the bishop out of the pawn chain, and the other bishop will now come here. So is it like now black has sort of equalized in the opening? Is that the case? Vidit thinking for his move here. He says, not really. You still have development to complete. I take on e4. Bishop takes, and now knight comes back to d2, hitting the bishop. Of course, Harika doesn't want to give it up, so she brings it back to g6. One of the things that you will notice is that black has some dark square weaknesses in the camp, and you will see how Vidit will try to take advantage of it. First, the rook comes to c1, open file, let's take it. Harika now offers the trade of the bishops. This is a tricky trade, because on one hand you get rid of white's bishop on f4, but on the other you also are exchanging your good bishop for white's bad one. Queen takes d6, and now one idea could very well be to play knight b3 to c5, putting pressure here. But Vidit goes with his queen. He's attacking the b7 pawn. Harika has to be careful here. How to meet this is the question. Also, if she moves her queen away, Vidit can go to this diagonal to stop castling for black. It's quite possible. And on time, Harika is around 30 seconds behind Vidit. She has to find a way to defend that pawn. But what is that way? She goes rook b8. That's a interesting move, because next move she wants to castle. How does Vidit now continue with his play? Well, he can go in queen b6 here, followed by knight b3, knight c5, clamping on those weakened dark squares as we had mentioned. But perhaps with queen b6, there are ideas of queen b4 in the air, you know, to trade the queens. It is quite possible. And now the times have almost equalized. Is the position close to equal now? Vidit is looking for some kind of bishop a6 ideas, trying to take advantage of this. Rook takes c6, and he's trying to calculate it out, all of these things. But finally he goes for a3. He's like, no, these are not things working. And Harika quickly castles. Vidit goes in. Now that queen b4 has been stopped, he goes in to b6. How should Harika respond to this? She offers a queen trade with queen d8, and Vidit takes it. Rook takes, Now it looks very, very equal, but in comes the knight, guys, and look, the knight is coming to c5. You can't play b6 because a6 would hang. These are very minute problems you face in the Exchange Slav, but actually they are very difficult to meet. What should Harika do here is the question now. She would like to get her king here to the center, but then knight c5 threatens all sorts of knight a6 ideas, knight b7 ideas. This is a very pleasant position for white to play. Rook dc8 played, and one more problem that black faces is this bishop isn't doing much. Knight comes into c5, knight to e7 played by Harika. This was a nice move because now what she has managed to do is these pawns are no longer hanging because the knight is no longer hanging on c6. Vidit doubles, goes for the doubling on the c file. He goes rook to c3. Maybe the other rook will come to c1. And Harika also wants to double. She plays rook to c6. And Vidit can bring his other rook to c1. And maybe even rook b3. You will notice that this bishop is playing a major role while this bishop is actually just staring on that blank diagonal. Rook b3 played. Now b7 is hanging. How do you meet it? You can play b5, but then the knight would have a permanent outpost on the c5 square. Is that what you want to do? With 20 seconds left, Harika does push the pawn to b5. Time is low, position is difficult. And with its knight on c5 is a monstrous piece. What's next now? 20 seconds left for both sides. Rook to c1 played, and the knight jumps to f5. Where's the knight going? Maybe Harika wants to play it from d6 to c4. Vidit comes back to c3. And Harika sees no real discovered attack, so she goes knight to d6. And she wants to plant her knight on c4. Vidit stops it with b3, h6 to take away the back rank weakness there. And now knight jumps to d7. Rooks are traded on c3. And Harika plays her rook with 15 seconds left. But it's a huge blunder because now after knight c5, the a6 pawn is lost. And there's no way to defend it. And she's going to lose both her pawns. She plays a5. Bishop takes b5, comes on the board. And white is now harvesting his excellent position. Wins a pawn, knight b7. The second pawn is also hanging. There's no way to defend the a5 pawn. Harika brings her bishop in, but the knight takes the pawn and defends b3. Vidit starts bringing his king. So does Harika, but 2 pawns deficit is a bit too much to handle here. Bishop e4, f3. I think rest is quite easy for a player of Vidit's caliber. He improves his knight towards the center and now starts pushing his pawns. a5, knight goes back to c8, b4. With a 2-second increment, this is not so difficult to win. b5, the pawn pushes forward further. b6, knight to c6 played. Bishop b5, ed played, and you can't take the pawn because the bishop is hanging on e8, and this is all over. This pawn is going forward. I think it's time to resign the game here. Oh, Harika can win the pawn on a5, but her bishop is hanging. She takes on a5, but instead of this, oh, b7 played on the board, and resignation there by Harika. Excellent game by Vidit, showing the power of Exchange Slav, and also that in symmetrical positions it's not always drawish. The side with some weaknesses to attack, the side with slight superior activity can really gain a lot of advantage.